$300 million is just too much pressure. That's too much for me. After yelling in agony, the man fled in some direction. He works for the company where I am employed as an interpreter. The president, Mr. Armstrong, and Kevin, the head of sales, were with us on this particular day as we made our way to the assigned meeting room for a business meeting with a large multinational organization. From the rear seat, he must have heard Mr. Armstrong exclaim, "If we pull this off, a $300 million revenue boost might just be within reach." I proposed that we take a little bathroom break at a convenience store after observing the interpreter hold his stomach due to nervousness. However, as soon as he got back to the car from the store, he broke down in tears and fled with a resolute expression. Mr. Armstrong and the others seemed very worried, so I said, "Please, let me handle this." This marked the start of my journey, one in which I assumed tasks well beyond my typical secretarial obligations. I'm 30 years old, and my name is Brandon. At X Corporation, I serve as the president's executive assistant, managing Mr. Armstrong's calendar, setting up conference spaces and staff as needed, and helping him with anything he needs are all part of my job. I'd occasionally act as a driver as well, taking other executives along with Mr. Armstrong. Although I recall first being somewhat anxious about driving senior executives, I've become accustomed to driving since I obtained my license. I've occasionally taken road vacations with friends, but when top executives are involved, the pressure is a little more. One day, I went to Mr. Armstrong's office after finishing a research project he had asked me to do. I opened the door and said, "Excuse me." Mr. Armstrong and two other suit-clad coworkers were seated there. They were seated around a center chair and engaged in a serious conversation. However, they all turned to face me as soon as I spoke. "Oh, Brandon." Kevin, the head of sales, was the one who mentioned that. He waved his hand casually and spoke in a comfortable tone. Timothy, the company's interpreter, mumbled, "Ah, hello, Brandon," with a small bow and anxiously glancing about. I nodded to everyone and started making coffee. For this crucial impending meeting, Mr. Armstrong personally put together a team consisting of Timothy, Kevin, and himself. This was one of many recent meetings in the president's office, and they appeared to have been talking about their intentions. Mr. Armstrong, regarding this part of the document, "Yes, it might be best to revise that section." The calming scent of the coffee seemed to ease the tense atmosphere as I poured it. I placed a cup in front of each of them and stood back to watch in silence. I probably won't be at a make-or-break meeting like this because I'm only the president's assistant. These three must be under a lot more pressure than I am, even though I take my obligations seriously. I lead a rather tranquil existence. During the week, I work, and on the weekends, I go shopping, watch movies, or just idly browse the mall. Even though I don't have a partner, I kind of like having the ability to do anything I want in my spare time. Sorry, I'm spending my next day off with my wife. Even while I occasionally feel a little alone when my friends decline invites to hang together, I don't really find myself wishing I had a partner now that some of them have started getting married. I've been able to have a happy life and enjoy the small pleasure of being happy without having many serious grievances. By the way, Kevin strikes me as having a kind, laid-back personality. Kevin, could you please check this? Yes, it does look fantastic. As always, I appreciate your attention to detail. I've seen him interacting with his team several times, and he never loses his warm smile. It's not a forced smile. Every word he says genuinely feels like it comes from the heart. The sales department he leads also seems to share a harmonious, trouble-free atmosphere. The entire team embodies that same gentle, positive vibe Kevin brings. However, he's not entirely without ambition or dedication to his work. Kevin's passion for each task is contagious, motivating his team to bring their best efforts too. I've often looked up to Kevin's work ethic since I joined this company. Each time, I'd think, I need to work harder, just like him. Given how diligent and capable he is, it's no wonder Mr. Armstrong chose to put him on this team. With Kevin involved, it feels like things are bound to go smoothly. Our other team member, Timothy, the interpreter, is my peer. I sat near him at our orientation, and at one point, I asked him how he ended up joining the company. When I spoke to him, he reacted with a surprised, "Had, what's up?" which, in its own way, became a memorable first impression. Apparently, he'd been going to kids' English classes since he was very young. By the time he reached upper elementary school, he'd nearly mastered English, so he started learning other languages too. It was so exciting watching my knowledge expand and seeing myself improve over time until I could speak fluently without stumbling. Timothy spoke those words, lowering his gaze nostalgically, as if reminiscing about that moment. His interest in languages never waned, and eventually, he went to the nation's top university to study linguistics. After graduating, he worked freelance as an interpreter and in language-related roles before joining X Corporation as a full-time employee. Timothy is 29, a little younger than me. Regardless of age, I respect him just as much as I do Kevin because he's incredibly skilled. But even someone as capable as Timothy has his challenges. He's rather shy, prone to anxiety, and has trouble expressing his opinions. I've seen him a few times in discussions with Mr. Armstrong and Kevin. When asked, "So, Timothy, what do you think?" he often turns red, looking a bit panicked. He stammers, barely able to get a word out. If he's this way around his own colleagues, dealing with unfamiliar clients during business talks must be even more challenging. Apparently, the stress sometimes causes stomach issues. He would murmur, excuse me, I need to go to the restroom," and end up hiding out there for about 10 minutes. For this reason, any meetings involving Timothy are scheduled with extra time as a buffer. He keeps stomach medicine on hand at all times, not just in his bag, but in his suit pocket, too. I've even seen the small medicine case fall out when he leans over occasionally. But his language skills are so exceptional that his nervousness pales in comparison, making him one of the company's top assets. Around the time Timothy joined, the company started handling more international consultations, and his presence gave a noticeable boost to those efforts. Of course, this is only mentioned in his absence to avoid adding to his nerves. Countless discussions took place in the president's office. Finally, the day came for our team to head out for an important business meeting. We planned to meet at the station near the company, and then I'd drive us to the location. "Hey, good morning, Brandon." "Good morning, Mr. Armstrong." Mr. Armstrong arrived 10 minutes early. Kevin joined us around the same time, and I gave them a quick nod. "Thanks for driving today, Brandon." "Yes, I will drive safely." With that, we waited for the last member, Timothy. As Mr. Armstrong and Kevin talked over the meeting, I kept glancing down at my watch. The ticking hands moved closer to the meeting time, and my heartbeat grew louder with each passing second. There was no sign of him at all. I looked around, but I couldn't spot anyone who looked like him. I quickly took out my phone and called, but all I got was the soulless beeping of an unanswered call. "Has Timothy still not shown up?" Mr. Armstrong asked, his face starting to show some concern. Could he be feeling unwell, or did something happen on his way out of the house? Just as I began to worry about Timothy's whereabouts, I heard a breathless voice. "Sorry for the delay. I'm so sorry for keeping you waiting." Timothy finally showed up, rushing in a few minutes after our meeting time. He explained that he had been hit with severe stomach pains from the nerves, and since he was running, he hadn't noticed my call. Mr. Armstrong, Kevin, and I all sighed in relief. Thank goodness. For a moment, I'd feared we were starting the day off with an unexpected incident. But it looks like we're back on track. "I'm truly sorry," Timothy said, his expression heavy with guilt. As Mr. Armstrong and Kevin assured him that it was all fine, Timothy kept apologizing repeatedly. Our client today was a company with a major international presence. While I kept my eyes on the road, I listened to snippets of conversation between Mr. Armstrong and Kevin, as though I were tuning into a radio show. It's hard to believe this opportunity finally came through. Yes, our persistence paid off. The voices of Mr. Armstrong and Kevin sounded as if they were savoring their joy. It seemed they had been reaching out to the other party for years, and now, after much effort, they finally made it happen. Clearly, they were putting everything into this deal. The client company is a true giant in its field. Their representative was scheduled to fly back home today, but had made time for this meeting right before departure. If this works out, that $300 million revenue goal could actually become a reality. Through the rearview mirror, I could see Mr. Armstrong's excited grin as he clenched his fist with confidence, while Kevin responded with a gentle smile. Timothy, in the passenger seat, went pale and began to tremble visibly. "Are you all right? Are you sure you're okay?" His shaking was so intense that I could feel it even from where I sat. No matter how hard I tried, it kept slipping into the corner of my vision. I knew I should focus, but my eyes kept darting over to it involuntarily. "Yes, I'm fine, sorry," he said. But it was clear he didn't mean it. His voice and body were both trembling, and his words faltered at the end. He was far more nervous now than he was during the discussion at our office. That's just how he is under pressure. A $300 million figure was weighing heavily on his shoulders. "Here, take this if it helps." At a red light, I handed him a honey candy from the stash I kept in the car, hoping it might offer him a little comfort. "Oh, thank you." Timothy quickly tried to put it in his mouth, but his hands were trembling, and he struggled to open the wrapper. After about 5 minutes, the amber-colored candy finally entered his mouth, only highlighting his nervousness even more. The hard clinking sound of the candy against his teeth continued until it fully melted. While I was curious about the conversation between Mr. Armstrong and Kevin, my mind was mostly occupied by concern for Timothy. When I noticed him leaning forward and clutching his stomach, I decided to stop at a convenience store for a restroom break. "Sorry, I need to use the restroom." Timothy quickly got permission from the cashier before dashing into the restroom. "Do you think he'll be all right?" I asked. "He may be struggling now, but I'm sure once we're in the meeting, he'll deliver as usual." Mr. Armstrong and Kevin watched him with worry, but their conversation soon drifted back to the upcoming deal, their excitement palpable. This is a $300 million business, the highest in our company's history. Let's hope it all goes as planned. They continued, their enthusiasm turning to optimistic projections. Caught up in their high spirits, I couldn't help but join in, getting excited along with them as we chatted away, our voices filling the car with lively anticipation. As we continued talking for a while, Mr. Armstrong's phone buzzed, signaling an incoming call. He held it to his ear and began speaking about something, so I turned my gaze toward the convenience store entrance, waiting for Timothy to come out. Just then, right on cue, he appeared and glanced around the parking lot with a troubled look. His eyes darted in every direction as if searching for something. Did he forget where we parked the car? I rolled down the driver's window and called out, "Timothy, over here." He snapped his head up at the sound and seemed like he would come straight to the passenger side. But instead, he muttered, uh-oh, and began groaning. Something was definitely wrong. His body was trembling even more than before our break. Even from a slight distance, I could see his lips had lost all color. His eyes were wide, as if they might pop out of his head at any moment. As I looked on, stunned with my mouth slightly agape, Timothy threw out a shocking statement. $300 million. It's too much for me. I can't handle a role that important. What? Wait, Timothy. But before I knew it, he was sobbing and sprinting away. Even random passersby were caught off guard by the bizarre scene, staring at him as they passed. But Timothy paid them no mind, increasing the distance between us without slowing down. "Timothy, where are you going?" I quickly put the drink I was holding into the cup holder, threw open the door, and prepared to chase after him. Just as I stepped out, Mr. Armstrong's sharp voice called out from behind me. "Wait, Brandon. I just got a call from John, our business associate." It seems John had requested to move up the meeting time. "The destination is just up ahead." "I can handle the situation," he said, though it would mean giving up on following Timothy. "But, Mr. Armstrong, what about Timothy?" Usually, Kevin always wore a calm smile, but even he looked distressed now, his face tense. Mr. Armstrong pressed a hand to his forehead, his face falling. He must have been torn between not wanting to inconvenience the client who arranged this opportunity and his concern over Timothy. I pressed my lips together tightly, waiting for his decision. It felt like an endless silence stretched on. It was so quiet it seemed like we were the only ones left in the world. But at last, Mr. Armstrong slowly began to speak. "Timothy is a grown man. He's not a helpless child. He looked upset, but he should be able to catch a ride home. And he has a phone, so we can reach him. I doubt he'll run into any real trouble." At that, Kevin interrupted urgently. "But he's our interpreter for this deal, isn't he? When it comes to high-level business English, well, our language skills are limited." Mr. Armstrong's eyes widened, and he groaned. "Oh, that's right." Though he appeared composed, the air around him made it clear he was actually panicking inside. "Should we still try to catch up with him? But if we do, then we'll be cutting it too close to the appointment time." While Mr. Armstrong and Kevin deliberated, time continued to tick away mercilessly. Noticing how fast the clock was moving toward the appointment time, Mr. Armstrong's anxiety visibly increased. A faint sheen of cold sweat was beginning to form on his forehead. Watching him like that, an idea suddenly came to me. Maybe this was my chance to repay Mr. Armstrong. The ticking second hand on my watch, the tense voices of Mr. Armstrong and Kevin, and no other solution coming to mind, I tightened my fist subtly as if gathering my resolve. "Mr. Armstrong, I have a suggestion." Both of them flinched at my voice, turning to look at me almost simultaneously. "Given how Timothy looked, I doubt he'll be back any time soon. Why don't you leave this to me?" "Brandon?" Kevin was the first to react, while Mr. Armstrong, eyes wide, stared intently at me, forgetting even to blink. "I may not speak multiple languages like Timothy, but I can handle English just fine." My words made the two of them exchange glances. Mr. Armstrong briefly glanced at his watch, then nodded as if he had made up his mind. "All right, I'll leave the interpreting to you." Relieved that they trusted me in this high-stakes situation, I let out a quiet "thank you," feeling a weight lift from my chest. I was worried about Timothy, but right now, we had no choice but to move forward with the meeting. Leaving the convenience store behind, we headed to the rental conference room near the airport. The clients were already there, and following Mr. Armstrong's lead, we each greeted them and exchanged handshakes. Everything moved quickly, without a moment to catch our breath. I wondered, absent-mindedly, if waiting around for them would have made me even more nervous. The client's president was John Smith. When I shook hands with him, he held on tightly, not letting go. It felt like he held my hand far longer than he had with Mr. Armstrong or Kevin. "What's going on?" As I tilted my head slightly in confusion, he looked me over intently and blurted out in surprise, "Are you Brandon? I've been looking for you. I finally found you." Both Mr. Armstrong and Kevin let out sounds of shock alongside me. I hadn't expected my name to come up here, of all places. It seemed he knew who I was, but I had no memory of him. As I glanced down, trying to search my memory, John began speaking. "We met once when you were in college," he said, a hint of nostalgia in his voice and perhaps a touch of disappointment that I didn't remember. John's words took my breath away. Memories from before I started working as the executive assistant to the president flooded back like a flashback. I'd always loved studying, or maybe it was more that I had an intense curiosity. I hated the feeling of not knowing something. Just doing the worksheets from school wasn't enough, so I'd buy extra study books myself and never missed a chance to review and prepare. That drive helped me get into Harvard University after high school. The excitement of studying specialized topics thrilled me, and I remember not being able to sleep the night before my first class. A good memory in its own way. Even after starting college, my thirst for knowledge and curiosity for learning never slowed down, and I managed to keep up good grades. One day in a certain class, we had a group discussion. I'll be the facilitator. I volunteered right away, and since no one objected, I took the lead. The discussion went smoothly, with everyone contributing ideas, making it a productive and enjoyable experience. We even reached a solid conclusion within the time limit, leaving us all with a satisfying sense of completion. John had been watching that discussion. He had connections with people at the university and had taken the opportunity to observe students. Apparently, I had caught his eye. "Hey, do you have a moment after the class?" He called out to me. When I turned around, I saw an unfamiliar adult standing there. Though he was smiling warmly, I remember being cautious at first, unsure of his intentions. Yes. What is it?" In response to my guarded answer, John replied enthusiastically, "Your skills are truly impressive." I was so shocked by the unexpected compliment that I froze, mouth slightly open. Then he continued, his words spilling out with excitement. "Do you know what you want to do after college?" Even though I left Japan to attend this university, I hadn't really figured out my future plans. I mumbled, unsure of what to say, but I couldn't lie or try to act impressive. When I admitted honestly that I hadn't decided, he responded with an exaggerated, "What? That's practically a loss for the world." That was definitely an overstatement. Not sure whether to laugh or take him seriously, I gave a faint, uncertain smile. "Then how about coming to work for us?" He mentioned that he runs a company in the US. The business card and introduction materials he rummaged through and handed me bore the name I Corporation. "A talent like yours would be welcome any time," he said with a playful wink before practically skipping away with a cheerful stride, leaving me there, mouth agape. It was such a memorable encounter. But as time passed and graduation approached, I had completely forgotten his offer. The business card, once carefully placed somewhere noticeable, had somehow slipped to the back of my drawer. Back then, my mind was filled with thoughts of returning to Japan. I missed my childhood home, the delicious seafood, and the safe streets. So, I decided not to pursue a job in the US and return to Japan with the Harvard degree I had worked so hard for. Looking back now, I feel a bit embarrassed, but at the time, I was quite full of myself. I thought, surely any company would want someone like me, and I had a rather arrogant attitude. As it turned out, my prediction was spot on. Every company wanted someone with a Harvard degree like mine. Each time I mentioned the university's name in a job interview, I saw a shift in the interviewer's expression. Initially uninterested, they gradually lit up, their eyes sparkling as if they'd stumbled upon a hidden treasure. I found it amusing and took satisfaction in feeling like I was the one choosing a company to work for, which now feels like a regrettable part of my past. Even though I received multiple job offers, I stubbornly insisted on only accepting a position that met all my conditions. So, it took quite a while to find a company that fit. Once I finally started working in Japan, though, my career was far from smooth. My pride kept me from following my boss's instructions, and my resistance to their way of working left me isolated. "I can't stand working with him," I overheard senior employees saying in the empty break room. "He never listens to instructions. He's so overconfident. Glad I didn't have to train him. It would have just been extra stress." I came across comments like that more than once or twice. Naturally, none of them were positive, and it was always complaints about me. But I couldn't rein in my inflated pride and ended up blaming everyone else, thinking, they just don't understand me. Of course, this led to further alienation from my colleagues, and when I clashed with my boss over a project during my second year, I impulsively quit. Still, my arrogance didn't go away. I'd assumed I'd find a new job quickly. I did get a few offers, but none matched the conditions of the company I had just left. If only I'd dropped the mindset of being the one doing the choosing, I might have found a job easily. Instead, I went without work for 2 years. During that time, I received invitations to class reunions and messages from old friends asking me to go out, but I turned them all down. I was mortified by the thought of anyone laughing at me as the unemployed Harvard graduate. I'm talented, so why did things turn out like this? After being lost in these thoughts for half a year, I felt something snap in my mind, like a crack splitting through me. Maybe it was the sound of my overblown pride shattering, or maybe my mind finally reaching its limit. Suddenly, I had this idea of applying for jobs as if I only had a high school diploma, to even deceive myself. Although it took time to get hired, one company did bring me to the final interview with the president. That was X Corporation, the very company where I'd eventually work as an assistant. I had no other options left. I had to make it happen. Whatever questions they asked, I'd have to answer flawlessly. With that mindset, I went in, but I was left speechless almost immediately after the interview began. "You're not really a high school graduate, are you?" It was Mr. Armstrong who cornered me with that question right from the start. Of course, a hastily faked resume from an amateur would be exposed immediately. Regret washed over me slowly, and without a second thought, I dropped to my knees and apologized sincerely. "I'm terribly sorry." The only thought in my mind at that moment was, it's over. I couldn't imagine any scenario where I'd still be considered for the position. I was fully expecting him to tell me to leave, but instead, I heard unexpected words. "I get the feeling that you're actually a sincere, hard-working person. Perhaps so diligent that you veered off track and ended up falsifying your background. That's the impression I get from you." There was a kind tone in his voice, completely free of any judgment. Hearing that, my hardened heart softened, and I couldn't stop the tears from streaming down my face. To my shock, Mr. Armstrong smiled and told me he would forgive what I had done and hire me as his assistant. "Thank you so much." I pressed my forehead to the floor once more out of deep gratitude and vowed never to deceive others for my own selfish reasons again. And so, I began my journey as his assistant, which brings me to where I am today. Whenever I recall those days, especially my behavior during the job search, I still get chills down my arms. Yet, over time, I've come to see those experiences as essential. With John's high regard for me, the business meeting went smoothly. We even received the encouraging words, "I'd love to seriously consider this proposal." In the end, he added, "Honestly, I'd like Brandon to join our company, but if you've chosen a place, then I hope you can thrive there." His tone held a familiar blend of nostalgia and loneliness, just like before the business meeting. However, this time it seemed to carry even more warmth. We shook hands once more, and I drove him to the airport instead of him taking a taxi. Watching him walk away, I felt a sense of closure. A few days after the meeting, Timothy still hadn't shown up at the office since his escape from the convenience store. Just when I began wondering if he would ever return, Mr. Armstrong told me, "Brandon, we managed to get in touch with Timothy." I finished up the research task Mr. Armstrong had assigned me, gathered my laptop and files, and headed to his office. "Excuse me," I said, stepping in with a quick greeting, only to find Mr. Armstrong holding the receiver to his ear. "Yes, that's right. Come to my office right away," he said on the internal line. He gestured for me to come in with a wave, so I moved forward and set my things on the central table. A few minutes later, Kevin entered the office after me. Then Timothy arrived, walking with an awkward gait. "Mr. Armstrong, what's this about?" It seemed I was the only one who knew what was about to be discussed. Kevin looked puzzled, and Timothy, his head down, was trembling slightly, clearly feeling uneasy. After looking at each of us in turn, Mr. Armstrong spoke in a solemn tone. "Brandon, please start with your report." His voice wasn't particularly loud, but it filled the room with authority. I nodded slowly and turned to Kevin. "Kevin, have you heard a certain rumor going around the company?" "A rumor?" Caught off guard by my question, he blinked in surprise. "It's regarding a company we could call a rival, Z Corporation." His gaze drifted into the air as if searching his memory, though in truth, it was likely just to avoid eye contact with me. "Oh yes, I remember. There's talk that Z Corporation has been attempting to disrupt our work and poach our talent. But it's just a rumor, right?" After he finished speaking in one breath, he twisted his lips into a crooked smile, an obviously forced expression, completely unlike his usual demeanor. I narrowed my eyes slightly. Yes, that's the one. "It would be nice if it were just a rumor, don't you think so, Timothy?" I asked, glancing between Kevin and Timothy. Timothy, probably not expecting the conversation to shift to him, responded with a pathetic, "Huh. Yes." I sighed quietly and said, "Unfortunately, it's not just a rumor." Opening my laptop, I played an audio file. A familiar voice filled the room. "Just before the meeting, the interpreter is set to run away. Neither I nor Mr. Armstrong can handle advanced English, so if the interpreter leaves, the deal's off." "What? No way." Kevin's face went stiff, his mouth opening and closing silently, struggling to process the words he just heard. He reached out, perhaps to stop me from playing further, but the next words rooted him to the spot as if he'd been nailed in place. "Oh, don't worry. I already promised him 30% of the payment. No one can resist money. And as for your company, when I joined Z Corporation, you did promise to give me a better deal than X Corporation, right?" The voice was twisted and malicious, far from the way Kevin usually sounded. To think he'd hidden such a dark side while presenting himself as an ideal employee at X Corporation. Realizing he couldn't escape the truth any longer, both Kevin and Timothy collapsed to the floor, their legs trembling like newborn fawns. When questioned, they confessed everything. With the undeniable evidence of the recording, they must have realized there was no point in hiding it any longer. Their voices and expressions conveyed resignation, and they seemed almost ready to give up. Kevin admitted that he planned to jump ship to Z Corporation for better treatment, with the additional reward of sabotaging X Corporation's $300 million deal. Timothy, on the other hand, had been instructed to flee right before the meeting, earning 30% of the sabotage fee for doing so. So, the trembling he'd shown at the convenience store was all an act. "We're so sorry. Please forgive us." Both of them bowed deeply, their heads almost hitting the floor as they begged for mercy. Their desperate display reminded me of my own interview with Mr. Armstrong, but the words Mr. Armstrong had for them this time were nothing like those he'd once spoken to me. "This is an unforgivable betrayal of the company." His voice was cold and cutting like a shard of ice. His eyes, devoid of any warmth, were pitch black. Watching the two of them shrink under his gaze, I felt conflicted, painfully aware that I was hardly in a position to judge anyone's lies. In the end, both Kevin and Timothy were fired. I took over the interpreter role temporarily, though I wasn't able to cover any languages other than English. To address this, I planned to work closely with HR to recruit someone new for the role. A while later, the deal with John's White Corporation was successfully finalized. Now, to make Mr. Armstrong's goal of that $300 million a reality, I'd need to work hard to build a strong relationship of trust with John. Securing the deal was just the starting line, and the road ahead was sure to be busy. Still, I felt a sense of relief, believing I had finally repaid Mr. Armstrong. Not that he ever seemed to view his generosity toward me as a debt I needed to repay. Even if I were to mention it, he would likely tilt his head in confusion. But that's fine. This is something personal to me. I should have repaid the debt for being hired. Next, I need to start repaying the kindness shown and forgiving the lies I told. With that resolve in my heart, I headed to an important meeting with John, ready to face what lay ahead. I am quite fortunate. Ultimately, I can provide my cherished daughter with a career that aligns with her promising future. Mark, the manager in front of me, smiled at me as he stated this. He went on talking when I remained silent. Your job will be taken over by my daughter, so you might as well quit immediately. This dude seemed to have set me up. In addition, he intends to pilfer the $30 million deal I negotiated and keep it for himself and his associates. I was trembling with rage at the time, like I was about to blow up. It was also true, though, that I was powerless to stop his brutal treatment. I was forced to take the penalty that was meted out. But after a few months, everything changed drastically. It is true that people who attempt to steal something from someone else will ultimately suffer from divine vengeance. The guy who dragged me down, Mark, finally fell from grace. His inability to really comprehend his own daughter was the root of this failure. I'm 32 years old, and my name is Ryan. I work for a pharmaceutical company in the sales division. It's been about 10 years since I started working for this company right after I graduated from college. Despite my initial difficulties adjusting, I believe I've now mastered my job. New developments are produced daily in the pharmaceutical sector. As I continue to discover new things, I find this environment to be both gratifying and stimulating. Becoming an MR is my ultimate ambition. I haven't altered this goal since I began working here. You could even say that my only reason for joining this organization was to become an MR. In order to get their company's products included into medical practices, MSRs are responsible for informing medical practitioners about the safety and efficacy of those products. It's a crucial position that might alter the medications that pharmacies and hospitals stock. The new drugs that are being developed might even save lives. It makes me proud and inspires me even more to know that my work makes such a significant impact on society. Nevertheless, I have a long way to go before reaching my objective. I'm working really hard in the sales department right now. This work is really difficult, and the truth is that I was first unable to get any contracts. Nothing worked, no matter how passionately I pitch or how well I try to describe our offerings. I was actually frequently turned away at the entrance. But I persevered. I suppose I've always been naturally tenacious. I continued to throw nonstop while strolling from place to place out of sheer willpower. I also came to the realization that I needed to be well-versed on our products in order to explain their value to others. I therefore committed myself to carefully reviewing our items each day. I eventually gained the position of manager as a result of my efforts. Getting the promotion seemed like a reward for all of my hard work. While I've been fully immersed in my work and leading a fulfilling life, I've recently been presented with an incredible opportunity. It's for the newly established overseas business department in our company. Much to my surprise, the CEO, Mr. Carter, personally approached me with the offer to head this department. Are you really entrusting me with a new department? The unexpected proposal filled me with joy, as though I were on cloud 9. After hearing more, I learned that Mr. Carter highly valued my language skills. To be honest, I've always felt that my proficiency in English was a strength. I've always enjoyed learning and discovering foreign languages. This time, I was thrilled to finally have an opportunity to put those skills to use with the launch of this department. Other members were also brought together. Some were familiar faces, while others were people I hadn't interacted with much. Even so, I made an effort to treat everyone equally and help each person shine in their own way. Among them, a female colleague named Sarah, who I was responsible for mentoring, seemed to particularly appreciate my guidance. Ryan, I really admire your work ethic. I want to become like you as soon as possible. I'll do my best, Sarah would often say to me. When you're respected like this by a colleague, there's no way you can slack off. To meet their expectations, I pushed myself even harder at work. I believe that by tackling even the smallest tasks with full effort, I could set an example and become a better leader for my team. Then, one day, my hard work finally paid off. I managed to secure a major $30 million contract. The client was an American pharmaceutical company. They proposed working with us on the joint development of a new drug. However, at first, they didn't seem very enthusiastic about the idea. While it wasn't an outright rejection, their response felt lukewarm at best. But I couldn't afford to let this opportunity slip away. Determined to persuade them, I held numerous discussions with the client, presenting our case repeatedly. As a result, they gradually came to see the value we could bring. When I announced the successful contract to my department, everyone was overjoyed. Some praised me with remarks like, "As expected of you." Others were motivated, saying, "Let's follow in your footsteps and work harder." Some even approached me asking, "Please teach us the secrets to successful negotiations." This major success significantly boosted the morale of our team. I could feel a growing sense of unity within the group, which made me feel both encouraged and determined to work even harder. However, despite appearances, not everything in our new department was going smoothly. The truth is, there was one person who wasn't pleased with my efforts. That person was Mark, the head of our department. Initially, we didn't have a bad relationship, but over time, he began to target me relentlessly. Mark could be described as a complicated person. Despite being in the position of department head, he harbored a deep inferiority complex about his education. It likely stemmed from the fact that he only graduated high school before entering the workforce. He seemed to have a particular dislike for university graduates, highly educated individuals, or those with advanced skills. Above all, he appeared to genuinely resent people who were proficient in languages, a skill he completely lacked. For example, whenever we casually used business terms in conversations, he would snap, "We're Japanese, so speak Japanese." I often used business jargon unconsciously, which seemed to irritate him even more. Once, he went so far as to say, "Don't act cool. You're Japanese. Stop showing off. It's gross." These unreasonable remarks obviously made me angry, but since he was my superior, there wasn't much I could do but let his comments slide. One day, while I was working on some documents in the office, a colleague called out to me, "Ryan, sorry, but can you come here quickly?" The way they called my name and their tone carried a sense of urgency. Wondering if there was some sort of trouble, I left my desk with a slight sense of worry. "What's wrong?" I rushed over to the colleague who had called me. It turned out they had received a call from abroad and couldn't communicate effectively, so they wanted me to handle it. Aside from that, there didn't seem to be any major trouble. Relieved, I took the call and addressed the issue. As soon as I hung up, the colleague looked at me apologetically. "I'm sorry for troubling you, Ryan," they said, looking a bit downcast. But when I smiled and replied, "It's no problem at all." "Nothing to worry about," they seemed relieved. After seeing them off, I returned to my desk. I was about to resume my work when I noticed something slightly off about my computer screen. Something felt different. I couldn't pinpoint exactly what, but there was a subtle, unsettling sense that something wasn't right. Leaving the screen on while I was away had been a mistake in itself. Thinking it was an urgent matter, I had rushed off and forgotten to lock my computer. This meant that after I left, anyone could have accessed it. Perhaps someone had tampered with my computer with all the critical data stored on it. I was filled with anxiety, trying to keep calm. I glanced cautiously in Mark's direction. The moment our eyes met, he gave me a sly, unpleasant smile. Later that day, as I was about to leave the office after work, Mark approached me in a cheerful tone. He said, "Something interesting is going to happen tomorrow," before walking away with a cryptic smile. Of course, I had no idea what he was talking about. By the time I thought to ask, he had already disappeared. Feeling puzzled by his words, I headed home that night with some extra free time. I stayed up late studying for the AMMER certification exam. By the time sleep overtook me, I had completely forgotten the odd sense of unease from earlier. The next morning, as soon as I arrived at the office, I was summoned by Mr. Carter. I couldn't help but feel excited. Perhaps our overseas department had achieved a major milestone. With high hopes, I headed to the CEO's office. "Excuse me," I said, opening the door. The moment Mr. Carter saw me, he shouted, "What have you done?" Stunned, I froze in place. He was visibly furious. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't understand what happened," I asked nervously. With a thunderous expression, he replied, "There's been a data breach." Apparently, the materials I had prepared had been leaked to an external party. The client had discovered this and was furious, threatening not only to terminate the contract but also to sue for damages. "I didn't do it," I declared firmly, knowing I had no involvement whatsoever. There wasn't even a 1% chance I could have made such a mistake. However, Mr. Carter firmly said, "That's impossible." He explained that the leak was traced back to my email address and had occurred yesterday. How could that be? I mentally reviewed my actions from the previous day. Then I remembered stepping away from my desk briefly when a colleague called me. When I returned, I had felt something was off about my computer. It must have been tampered with during that short time. Realizing this, I wanted to explain I wasn't responsible. However, the fact remained that I had forgotten to lock my computer, creating the opportunity for this to happen. I had no excuse to offer. Mr. Carter's anger escalated, and eventually he said, "You may need to take responsibility by resigning." In essence, he was telling me I was being fired. Feeling utterly crushed, I left the office. As I stepped into the hallway, overwhelmed with despair, I noticed a man standing there. It was Mark. He smirked and said, "What's wrong? You look pale." I told him about my dismissal, still baffled by everything that had happened. Fighting shock, he exaggeratedly replied, "Oh no, you really should lock your computer next time." How did he know I had forgotten to lock my computer? Suspicious, I asked him directly. He brushed it off, saying, "Did I say that? Maybe you're so shaken by the news that you misheard me." His evasive response only deepened my unease. Ignoring my growing frustration, he continued speaking. "But really, I'm so lucky I can give my beloved daughter a job that's perfect for her, starting with that $30 million contract. It's just right for her future." I couldn't believe my ears. What could this possibly mean? Was he really planning to hand over the $30 million contract to his daughter, who had just returned from studying abroad? As if to confirm my suspicions, he continued speaking. "My daughter Emily will be taking over your position, so you might as well quit right away," he said. In that moment, I realized I had been set up by Mark. It was clear he was behind the data breach. That's why he smugly told me yesterday, "Something interesting is going to happen." Everything started to make sense. You're the one who leaked the information, aren't you?" I asked. "Who knows? What are you talking about?" Mark replied, half smirking as he feigned ignorance. I wanted to report this to Mr. Carter immediately, but Mark stopped me. "Do you have proof? Without evidence, how are you going to pin this on me?" "Poor you," he said mockingly. Then, with a grin, he added, "Better luck next time," before walking away. He was right. Without any proof, no one would believe me. In the end, there was nothing I could do, and I was forced to leave the company. 1 week before my resignation, Emily joined the company, effectively replacing me. On her first day, she approached me and said with a sneer, "You're still here? Don't get in the way of my work." I couldn't help but think, like father, like daughter. Emily had strikingly dyed hair, meticulously applied makeup, and a strong perfume that lingered wherever she walked. Sarah kindly advised her, "Since we handle pharmaceuticals, it might be better to avoid strong perfume." But Emily clicked her tongue in irritation and snapped, "Mind your own business, old lady." Her attitude was defiant, to say the least. On top of that, she spent work hours browsing social media on the company's computer, leaving her colleagues exasperated. 1 week later, the day of my resignation arrived. After tidying up my desk and ensuring everything was spotless, I left the office. As I stepped outside, Sarah ran after me. "Ryan, did something happen with Mark?" she asked. Since I was leaving, I saw no harm in explaining the situation. After hearing everything, Sarah was furious. "That's absolutely outrageous," she exclaimed, clearly enraged. I nodded weakly and replied, "It's terrible, but there's nothing I can do now." However, Sarah said resolutely, "I won't give up. I'll find a way to get the security camera footage. Once we have it, we'll know who's behind this," she declared with determination. Her words lifted a small weight off my chest, and I felt a glimmer of hope. As I left the company that day, I felt a bit lighter thanks to Sarah's promise. A week after my resignation, while job hunting, I received an unexpected call. It was from the very company I had secured the $30 million contract with. When I asked about the purpose of the call, they said, "If you're not working anywhere right now, why not join us?" The unexpected offer filled me with excitement. However, I was currently studying to earn a certification. I was searching for a workplace where I could finally achieve my goal of becoming an MStar. When I explained this, they'd assured me that they respected my ambitions. They even mentioned that they would consider promoting me to an MTAR position in the future. With such promising prospects, I decided to join the company without hesitation. After transferring, I became even more determined, dedicating myself to my studies at home to achieve my certification. Despite the difficult circumstances leading up to this change, starting fresh felt incredibly liberating. One day, during this new chapter of my life, I received a call from someone I never wanted to hear from again. Of course, it was Mark. The moment I answered, he shouted angrily, "Hey, what's the meaning of this?" When I asked, "What do you mean?" Mark explained that the pharmaceutical company had called to complain, saying, "We are receiving emails in incomprehensible languages from the new representative. Where is the previous person? Shouldn't you ask your daughter about that?" I thought. Honestly, I had already left the company and had no involvement. However, Mark insisted, "My daughter said she responded properly in English. There's no issue on our end." He then barked, "Check the email exchanges right now," and abruptly hung up. Suppressing a sigh, I opened the forwarded emails. The problem was immediately clear. Her emails made no sense at all. It wasn't just a matter of poor email etiquette. Her English was so chaotic that effective communication was impossible. So, the rumors about her were true. At that moment, everything finally clicked for me. After my resignation, I had briefly spoken with a former colleague about Emily. According to him, Emily could barely speak English. She studied abroad for a year in the US, but mostly stayed around Japanese people, so her English didn't improve. She even said herself that she got by on vibes, they explained. At the time, I was skeptical, but the emails left no doubt. On top of that, it turned out later that her strong perfume caused issues as well. Despite Sarah's earlier advice, Emily had continued wearing it, and the CEO of the pharmaceutical company was outraged, finding it incredibly disrespectful. It seems that, in the matter, Mark urged Emily, "You need to apologize immediately." However, she didn't appear concerned at all. Instead, she casually replied, "It's fine." I even took a photo with one of their employees as a keepsake and posted it on social media. Unfortunately, that very post led to an even bigger disaster. In the photo, Emily was holding a document with sensitive company data clearly visible. The data leak was complete. Mark panicked, but Emily didn't seem to grasp the gravity of the situation. Amidst the chaos, I received another call from Mark, Fix this immediately. This is a disaster. You can handle it, right? He shouted, his tone still as demanding as ever. I found it astonishing how demanding and arrogant he was despite asking for a favor. After all, he was the one who had set me up and gotten me fired. There was no reason for me to help him. None at all. How could he expect me to go along with such a self-serving request? Furious, I replied coldly, "You and your daughter seem to be quite skilled at leaking information. I'm no longer involved, so have Emily handle it." With that, I ended the call. Emily's string of mistakes continued to pile up, resulting in countless complaints to the company. Ultimately, the pharmaceutical company terminated the $30 million contract. To make matters worse, Emily's photo went viral, sparking public outrage. The situation escalated to the point where Emily was sued by the pharmaceutical company, causing a major uproar. It was only natural for the incident to be picked up by the news. Reporters began gathering outside the company headquarters daily. Meanwhile, Sarah delivered the final blow. She had managed to obtain the security camera footage from the day of the data breach. When Sarah showed the footage to Mr. Carter, it clearly captured Mark tampering with my computer during the brief moment I had stepped away. The video made it undeniably clear what had happened at the time. Coincidentally, it was the exact same time the emails had been sent, with mounting issues and an avalanche of complaints. The company couldn't handle the chaos. In no time, it collapsed entirely. Both Mark and Emily found themselves unemployed. Reportedly, they were hounded by the media even after the company's closure. Unable to leave their home, Emily suggested fleeing to the U.S., but Mark dismissed the idea, saying, "Neither of us can speak English." Meanwhile, I was thriving in my new role at the pharmaceutical company. Work was going well, and my studies for MFR certification were progressing smoothly. With the date of the MFR certification exam approaching, I was living fulfilling days while steadily preparing for the test. One day, I received a call from Sarah. She was also job hunting after the company's collapse, but it seemed she was struggling to find a suitable position and was deeply troubled by it. She reached out to me asking for some advice, so I decided to meet her for dinner that evening to talk through her concerns. Over the meal, we discussed her challenges, and I listened attentively to what she had to say. "Whenever I mention the name of my former workplace, I get rejected immediately," she said. It seemed the company's reputation had deteriorated far beyond what I had imagined. This was clearly making her job search much more difficult. It was a tough situation, no doubt about it. Thinking about how I could help her, I started considering what I could do to support her in finding a solution. After all, Sarah was the one who exposed Mark's wrongdoing and cleared my name. She fought for my honor, and I felt there must be something I could do for her in return. I suggested that she consider applying to my current pharmaceutical company. Her face lit up immediately. "Really? Getting a recommendation from you feels like a dream. Can I truly count on your help?" she said with excitement. Her joyful expression filled me with determination. "It's my turn to help," I thought as I nodded firmly. I recommended Sarah to my company, highlighting her intelligence and capabilities. Thanks to her strong skills and determination, she was successfully hired. Now she has become my trusted partner at work. Her efficiency and ability to excel were quickly recognized, and she earned the respect of everyone around her. Still, she often says, "Ryan, I've always admired you. I love how you approach life." Every time, her words make me blush with pride and gratitude. Meanwhile, Mark and Emily eventually moved to the U.S., but, of course, it was Mark. His inability to communicate in English was so severe that nothing seemed to go well for him. There was even an incident where he snapped at a cashier, shouting, "I'm Japanese. It's normal for me not to speak English." Nearby, a Japanese bystander calmly advised him, "We are in the U.S. If you're living here, perhaps you should study English." When I heard this story, I could vividly picture Mark's indignant reaction. It was just so typical of him. As for me, I continued dedicating my spare time to studying and finally obtained my MTAR certification. The moment my long-held dream became a reality, I was overcome with emotion, tears streaming down my face as I felt my years of effort had paid off. Becoming an MR was everything I had hoped for, but it was also more challenging than I imagined. The role required extensive expertise, came with strict quotas, and demanded relentless effort. Despite the difficulties, I found immense satisfaction in my work. Doctors and nurses at the hospitals I visited would often say, "We trust you, Ryan." It made me incredibly happy. That sense of trust gave me a profound sense of purpose. Recently, I've been receiving more compliments on my ability to mentor and guide others at work. It's likely that earning my certification deepened my knowledge significantly. This gave me the confidence to trust my own way of thinking. Many colleagues aspiring to become MRs have asked me for study tips. Having studied independently, I understand how tough it can be to navigate the process alone. The challenge of staying motivated and finding effective study methods is something I know all too well. That's why I decided to accept their requests. As a result, I now host study sessions for anyone interested, with the added purpose of helping to mentor and develop younger colleagues. By increasing the number of people who can become MRs, it might ultimately contribute to improving someone's health. This thought keeps me motivated, even during my busiest days. One evening after work, Sarah invited me out to celebrate my MTAR certification. We went to a cozy bar and enjoyed light conversation throughout the night. She repeatedly said, "Congratulations," which made me feel incredibly appreciated and proud. As we talked, the conversation naturally drifted toward work. I casually mentioned something about my job, but she suddenly frowned and said, "This is personal time. No work talk allowed. It's banned." Her expression and tone were so cute and amusing that I couldn't help but laugh out loud. At that moment, I realized something. Being with Sarah brought me a sense of peace. I had always kept my composure and hidden my stress, no matter how tough things got, but with her, I felt completely relaxed. What was this feeling? To be honest, I wasn't entirely sure what it meant. Sarah was an important colleague, a teammate, and a partner in the truest sense. That wouldn't change, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that there might be something more. For now, though, I chose not to overthink it. I simply knew that I enjoyed being with her, and that was enough. Looking back at everything that had happened, I could confidently say that my work life was going well. In fact, at my current company, I had managed to secure a $50 million contract. I was fortunate to be surrounded by great colleagues, making my workdays fulfilling and enjoyable. Still, I had come to realize that success wasn't about the numbers. What truly mattered was treating clients with sincerity and recognizing the impact of our work on others. After all, the comfort and conveniences we enjoy today are thanks to someone else's hard work. That's a truth I never want to forget. I also want to cherish the people working alongside me. No one can achieve everything alone. I hope to live by trusting and supporting those around me, helping each other along the way. That, I believed, was the most important lesson of all.